My name is Nanaol. I'm with the Realizing Rights RPC, and now I work with the Human Rights Advocacy Committee or Center. Yes.
Thank you. And what was the subject of your presentation today?
Well, I spoke about research that we had conducted into assessing laws and policies in Ghana relating to sexual and reproductive health, and whether or not these laws were actually protecting sexual and reproductive health rights in Ghana, especially sexual and reproductive health and rights of women and children in Ghana. So we basically assessed the law. We looked at the standards, the conventions that Ghana had ratified. We looked at the Beijing platform, what it says about SRH. We also looked at the African Charter, because now we have a protocol, an additional protocol on the rights of women, and then we measured it against what was actually happening on the ground. First looked at the legal framework, so we looked at the laws and we looked at the policies, and we identified gaps. One finding was that we found out that some of the laws and the policies were not speaking to each other, and there were inconsistencies. So, for instance, the law mentions the age of sexual responsibility as 16 years, but the reproductive health policy gives the healthcare providers the mandate to provide family planning services to sexually active adolescents from age 10. And that is a clear inconsistency that could create a lot of problems. But apart from that, we looked at how the law was being enforced. So for instance, we realized that perpetrators of sexual abuse were getting away with committing the crime of rape and defilement because the laws were not being enforced properly.
Great. And what was particularly successful about your approach, do you think?
Yeah, the success with our approach was how we were able to engage with high-level stakeholders, which stakeholders were able to understand and distill the message that we had, and they were able to use it to effect change. So we engaged with parliamentarians at the national level on the gaps between the law and the policy, and also we communicated some recommendations on how we could better protect SRH rights in Ghana. We used the opportunity of the consideration of a domestic violence bill in Ghana, and this was very great because the parliamentarians were at that particular time considering the domestic violence bill in Parliament. They were able to relate to what you were saying, especially were able to relate to the statistics that we gave to them of the 0.5% conviction rate out of 17,000 cases, reported cases. So they looked critically at the draft bill that they were considering, and they made certain changes to ensure that the prosecution of sex-related crimes would be better than it was. So now we have a clause in our Domestic Violence Act that you don't have to pay medical bills, or you don't have to pay for a medical report which you're going to use in court to as evidence against a perpetrator of rape or defilement. And we're hoping that will increase the rates of conviction, because we have 79% of our cases still under investigation at the close of the year, because victims cannot afford to pay $20 to $50 for medical reports that they would need to give to investigators and prosecutors to enable them to prosecute their case.
Thank you. And was there anything you particularly learnt from this process? Anything that you would, if you were doing it again, that you would?
Yes. Yes. One thing that I have learned is to sustain the engagement and to monitor, especially in the context of your objective. You need to have an objective, and our objective was to ensure better protection and filling in the gap. And what we realized is that we still have not been able to ensure better protection. Because yes, the parliamentarians have fulfilled their legislative role or function of giving us a law that we can work with, but now we need to move to the next stage of ensuring that the law is actually applied, because now victims are still having to pay for medical reports, because though the law has been passed, the healthcare providers are pleading ignorance of the law, because of course that is money that goes directly into their pocket. So we need to move to the next stage, and this is because of the objective that we had selected of ensuring better protection. So that means we need to move to the next stage of educating and doing more advocacy with the Ghana Health Service to ensure that they make sure that this policy is applied and the law is enforced.